has not been with us before, so this is the first time for her at Global Sciences. And I have asked our friend of many years to introduce her. John Sutton is the one who brought me to her, and I want to give him the privilege of introducing her to you. Some of you I know have seen her on various television and other programs. John knows her history, and I'm more than happy to have him introduce her, and thank you for bringing her to us. That one will probably work quite well, John.
Okay, thanks, Dean. I told Dean I was totally unprepared for that, and he says fine. I said, I don't know what to say about Etel. I haven't anything ready to tell you about her. And she said, well, it's very easy. Just tell him I'm the best. I met Etel in 1983 at a healing workshop at Johns Hopkins University. She's taught that course for many years, and she's done the radio talk shows and the TV shows. She has a TV special coming up soon about angels. She's going to be featured in that. Mainly, what does she do? She blows your mind. She expands your reality. She's most known as a healer, and that's what I think she's going to demonstrate this evening. But she, I recently found, is into a lot of things besides healing. She's had a lifelong relationship with aliens, among other things. The more I hear her stories, the stranger my life becomes. So I'm not going to take any more of her time. I know you want to hear her. Etel DeLoach.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton, for such a nice introduction. You should all be very happy that we have a fine person like Dr. Sutton's spreading the word.
Can you hear her?
No.
Etel, we need a little more volume or something or other.
I thought I had a microphone on.
Well, yeah, you do have.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. I'll start all over. I appreciate the fine introduction by Dr. Sutton, and I think that you should be very happy that we have a person like Dr. Sutton at NASA spreading the word there about healing and all of these other special and wonderful things that you've been hearing about here so far this weekend. I heard the first speaker this afternoon, Bryce Taylor, and I'd like to just take a minute to suggest something to you because it usually is part of what I talk about anyway in with an audience, and that is Bryce Taylor mentioned that she left her daughter at home or in the hospital, I guess in intensive care, her daughter Kelly, who's very ill. And I would like to suggest and ask each one of you to please take a minute and send some love and healing energy to her daughter Kelly so that when she gets home, she'll find her daughter very much improved. This is what we call distant healing. So just take a few seconds and send your loving thoughts for healing to Kelly, somewhere in South Carolina, I believe. Let's hope that she indeed does find her daughter much improved. I know I have a daughter, and I don't know how I could have left her to come here. It would have been very hard, as I'm sure it was for Bryce. If you'd like to know more about distant healing or absent healing or thought healing, as it is commonly called, someone ask a question later in the question and answer period, and I'll explain it in a little more detail because it's something that should be a part of your everyday life. Now, this is my second visit to Texas. My first visit here must have been about 10 years ago when I got an emergency phone call. Could I please jump on the next plane and come down here to see if I could help a young woman who had been in an accident and who was now on life support system. And of course, the prognosis was not very good. So I did just that. I came down and I was met at the plane and taken to a hotel room where I was going to quickly leave my suitcase and run off to help the young woman. But much to my amazement, when we opened the hotel room, it was full of yellow roses, the yellow rose of Texas. And I was very touched that these people had been so thoughtful as to put all these roses in my room there to welcome me. Roses, yellow roses especially, have always been a favorite of mine. And some nice friends here gave me some this time when I came down here. But when I went to help this young woman, she was unconscious. She had tubes sticking out of every orifice that you can imagine. And she indeed looked in a very, very sad situation. And I proceeded to work on her. And after I finished working with her, I stood there looking at her, and suddenly she opened her eyes. She had regained consciousness. And for a moment, of course, she looked rather bewildered. But then she said, "I have to pee, and I want to do it on my own." And with that, she yanked the catheter out herself, shocking all of us who were around there. And she said, "Get me a bedpan or I'll do it in the bed." So she made a remarkable recovery. I stayed there 3 or 4 days working with her. And of course, there are so many people that I work with that I can't possibly keep in touch with, but I'm sure that she's fine today. She seemed to be the athletic, strong type anyhow, as you can imagine from what she said when she regained consciousness. A very strong person. Now I've been introduced as a pioneer, a healer, a teacher, a researcher, and I really continue to work in all of these areas. I've been talking retirement for the last 2 or 3 years, and no one pays any attention. And I think my wind-up key is stuck anyway because I just keep on going and going like the Energizer Bunny. There's so many realities that I learned on a very, very less traveled road. By the time I was 3 years old, I knew, because I sensed it, but I was also told that I was an unwanted child. So what to do? At that age, even I decided that the best thing for me to do would be to become as invisible as possible, which is what I did. So don't feel sorry for me, because actually that was the very best thing that could have happened to me, because what did I do? I was born and lived in Louisiana, so I pretty much lived in the swamps. I was practically a little girl Tarzan, I guess you would say. And I was in the swamps all day long and got to know very intimately all the animals that live there: snakes, alligators, birds of every kind, bunnies, and all sorts of things, insects of all kinds that I watched lay their eggs and raise their young of all kinds. And so I became a nature spirit along with all the nature spirits there. I'm still very close to nature, and One thing about this hotel I don't like is I can't open the window. I'm a fresh air person, and I just don't know why they put these glued-in windows or whatever you call them. And in fact, I went to a seashore resort last year. Would you believe that even right on the ocean, the windows were sealed this way? And I thought, what? You go there for the ocean breezes, and the windows were sealed. I left. But no one told me that there was danger in the swamp, and so I was never harmed. And I think that we are harmed many times because we are programmed to be. We are told to don't go near snakes, for instance, because they'll bite you and all that. Well, you see, I didn't know that. No one had told me. And so, I just lived among all the animals. And in the swamps, of course, they have the bogs. If you know what those are, they're just clumps of grass-like things in the water. And of course, I hopped from one to the other in running around right in the swamp. One day I remember that I hopped on what I thought was a log, and then realized that the log had eyes. I had hopped on the back of an alligator who was asleep, but then he opened his eyes and looked at this skinny little kid and figured, why bother? She'd only be a mouthful of bones. So left me alone. But in any case, I never felt any danger, and in fact even spent many nights just curled up under the trees on pine straw or up in a tree. I was a tree climber. I always climbed and lived in the trees, and I would find some branches that were close together, snuggle in and lie there and have the wind blowing the branches and many times just rocking me to sleep up there in the trees. But you see, I think that beginning, living so close to nature, made me have much more reverence and care about all life, because I was able to watch very, very intimately the close relationship between all things. I saw frogs lay their eggs. I saw the tadpoles hatch. I saw the tadpoles grow into frogs. I saw the snakes having their babies. And what is most important, that no matter what kind of animal you saw having their babies, they all showed a lot of tender, loving care to their young, which is something even a lot of people don't do, unfortunately. So I lived on a very large farm, was 200 or 300 acres, as I remember. And we had fields of watermelon, fields of sugar cane, fields of corn, strawberries, name it. Plus, we also raised a large number of all kinds of animals, a lot of them which were raised for market. And I of course, became very close with the animals, because many times when I was hungry and I was afraid to go back to the house, I would just go out to the barn, lean back under a cow, and squirt milk in my mouth. That's the freshest milk you can get, and the most delicious. But the animals talked to me, and I thought it was normal at that time. All of this, I thought it was normal, because no one ever told me it wasn't. But I remember that when men would come and look over all the animals to pick out the ones that they thought were ready for market, when I would go in the barn later or back out in the field where the animals were, each animal told me that they were leaving the next day. They knew. Animals know. They have incredible consciousness, and they know. And this was also very pointedly brought to my attention years later when I was invited to do a cancer research project at McGill University in Montreal. And of course, the research and all the testing was going to be done on mice. And I had, of course, met many mice here and there, field mice and whatever. And the mice part didn't bother me at all. And I was told that there would be 100 mice involved. 50 of the mice would be given to me to decide how I would work with them. And the other 50 would be taken away from my proximity, of course, to be used for controls. Now, I can't go into detail of all that we did with these mice, but I'll just very briefly tell you that it was decided that all 50 mice that were going to be under my charge would be injected with 27,000 of the most potent cancer virus that was in existence, guaranteeing that they would all develop cancer. And then it was up to me to decide what the next steps that I would take with these mice, which is partly I did things such as dividing the 50 into groups of 10. And the first group of 10, I decided that I would give no healing treatment to before the injection. Another group I did give healing treatment to before the injection. Another group, we scoured half of Montreal to find some real, clean, untreated cotton, because I was going to energize some cotton and put a bit in each mice cage to see how they reacted to the cotton that was energized with the healing energy. It was very interesting that and then of course another 10 mice we put in the untreated cotton, and so on through the 50 mice. But I really had underestimated the intelligence and consciousness of mice. Because here again, I found that they were very intelligent animals. They knew why they were there. And there were 2 technicians who worked with me who came in twice a day to weigh the mice to check the tumor development and so on. But each time that they were coming, and of course sometimes they handled them very roughly, the mice would react. They told me that the technicians were on the way. They knew before I did. And that's how intelligent they are. But in the mornings when I went in, and of course I was working 8 days a week. You ate when you could, you slept when you could, and the rest of the time it was mice, 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 and mice. You had to be with the mice all the time to watch what was happening with them. It was very interesting that sometimes I would go and I would stick my hand in a cage and I'd say, "Who wants a healing today?" Some of the mice would come and get in my hand and want a healing. And some other mice, it was very interesting, would just turn their back and go to the corner of their cage, as much as to say, "Leave me alone, let me get this tumor grown and get it over with." So years later, I had a job, I was working for McGraw-Hill, and I was doing interview stories with executives of large corporations and research laboratories, and had a chance to talk very closely with these other research people. And it always amazed me how they ignore the intelligence and the real consciousness of all the animals that they work with. They treat them like inanimate objects. And I don't like to see the animals for research in any case, and I was very sorry that I had agreed to do it. One reason I did it was that the man in charge of it was a very good friend of mine, and he rather persuaded me to do it. But when the experience, and let me tell you that, of course, all the mice did develop tumors, which was, as I said, guaranteed. And but the interesting fact, just to conclude it, is that where they said that 27,000 of those cancer cells would guarantee that each mouse would get cancer and die of it, they were surprised that many of the mice not only survived because I treated them, but many of them lived a longer lifespan than normally mice do. And I also learned one little thing that I'm going to tell you. You're going to maybe squeal when I tell you. But the lifespan of a mouse is so short. And of course, they use mice so much because they are the nearest to the human system and respond similarly. So when they want something tested or experiments done that they want to do later on human beings, they can get a quick sampling by doing the same thing to mice. So one of the doctors on the thing told me this, so I'm going to tell you. He said, if you want to know, if you're that curious, you'd like to know what you're going to die from, get a little baby mouse, keep it with you 24 hours a day, take it with you to the table every time you eat, feed it everything that you eat, everything, and everything to drink, and whatever that mouse dies of at the end of its lifespan, that's what you'll most likely die of. Anybody to try that? Not really. But at the conclusion of this experiment, they wanted me to stay and repeat the experiment. And I thought under no circumstances would I do that. Besides, it was almost Christmas, and I was living in New Jersey at the time. And I said, no, I have to be home for Christmas with my children. However, I said, if you want to repeat the same experiment using with volunteer human beings, I'll do it. But I am not going to ever do anything where they are working with animals in the laboratory. There's so many other ways to do it. Now, people always ask me, when did you first know that you could do healing? Well, I always say that just as some people are born to be a Rembrandt, some people are born to be a Paderewski or whatever, some people are born with the art of healing. And apparently, this was why I have been doing this since I was born, and also because I had done it in many previous lifetimes. I have seen myself in many previous lifetimes, and the way that I do healing now, I think, is really more or less the culmination of all those varieties and methods of healing that I used in all the other lifetimes, because now I use so many modalities in my healing that when people ask me what kind of healing that I do, I say there's only one way I can describe it, that I call it a TEL system. But the first healing that I recall most vividly, that I was about 3 years old, and I was sitting on the bottom step on the back porch when I saw a duck coming towards me. As I said, we had all kinds of animals, many animals. And here was this duck walking towards me, but it was limping very badly because one foot seemed to be very injured. But the duck kept coming up to me, and when it got up to me, of course, being a 3-year-old little girl, immediately I thought, oh, poor duck, who hurt you, how, and said, does your leg hurt? And, started to stroke the duck and talk to it like a little girl would. And when the duck had enough, apparently, it walked away. And I remember that. Excuse me while I get a drink of my vitamin C energy drink. The air is so dry in these places that the throat gets dry. Another, so you see, one reason I guess I'm a vegetarian is because how could I eat that duck after I healed it? Could you? No, I couldn't. But another vivid recollection was when I was about 5. My mother had always suffered with excruciating back pain. At the end of the day, she would almost be crying with the pain in her back. And of course, we lived way, way out in the country, and you just couldn't run to the doctor anytime. And she was putting up with it when one day, here again, I guess she was complaining about her back, and I, feeling sorry, put my hand on her back, sort of, poor mommy hurts. And much to her amazement, when I put my hand on her back, the pain stopped. Now, of course, 5-year-old child, I hadn't the faintest idea what happened, and I don't think she did either. But she knew enough that after that, when her back hurt, she would ask me to touch her back, and the pain would stop. Now, there are so many realities, as I said to you, that all will, work with us. I learned about the nature energies naturally, living so closely there in the swamp most of my childhood, and what they did. And I would sit under the pine trees, and I would see all these elementals, little fairies, little elves, little gnomes, as well as people. However, I learned later that they were spirit people. I thought I was seeing real people because I am clairvoyant, I am clairaudient. And of course, I didn't know I was then. I didn't know anything. I thought I was just a normal kid. But they kept me entertained and amused, and I'm sure that they protected me against a lot of things that could have harmed me there in the swamp, because there certainly was plenty that could have harmed me. And in fact, even now, I know that many times I have been in very dangerous situations when my guardian angels, I am sure, I know, saved me from great harm. Now, there's so many realities that I have realized that there are. And I know that I've heard some other people here talking about other realities. And of course, I discovered all of these on my own, living in the woods, in the swamps. And when people ask me, how did I get where I am, I say, well, it was a very, very, very less traveled road as a pioneer, because I've been working in this field now for over 30 years, and as you know, even 20 years ago, you didn't dare say the ESP anywhere out loud because they thought, you were ready for the funny farm or something. But anyway, besides the elementals there's angels, and there's spirit beings, there's energy in all kinds of forms, there's extraterrestrials who help us and who are among us, there's sky people who are among us all the time. And I've been involved with ETs and sky people ever since I can remember. They were always there. I never looked for them. They always found me. And we always just had a wonderful relationship. And if I want to know anything, I just ask them, and I find out information. And wherever I travel, they travel with me, especially the sky people, whom I rely on a great deal, especially when I'm flying. And I started that years ago when on one of my trips from Egypt, I was coming back and had to change planes in London to get back here. And the Egyptian plane was late, and I thought I am going to miss that connection from London home. And I actually really had to run to catch the plane. But now my custom always is, before I get on the plane, any plane, when I'm going anywhere, I look at the energy field of the airplane, because then I'll know what kind of ride it's going to be. I would also know if the plane's going to crash or if it's safe or whatever. I can tell by the energy field. This time, when I was running to make the connection, they closed the door after me on the plane as I got in. That's how close I was to missing the plane. But as I got in my seat and sat down, I thought, oh my gosh, it's terrible weather, it's very stormy, and I didn't even get a chance to look at the energy field of the plane. And I thought, oh, is it going to be okay? When a voice said to me, the sky people will be in front of the plane. And that's the first time that they spoke to me. And after that, we had a regular relationship. Now, what I'm going to do as well is with being in close contact with ETs and sky people, you know, they're among us all the time. They walk the streets among us. They're everywhere. And once you meet them, you recognize them immediately. And usually it's the eye contact that you make that, you know, they know that you know, and you know that they know who they are. And you've heard many people relating what they think were, you know, bad experiences with malevolent extraterrestrials and other beings. But I can only tell you that I've always had a wonderful relationship with them. I have been made aware that there are benevolent ones, because I have seen them, but it's always seemed to me that the ones that I am friends with, and there are many of them, are a protection to me, so that I don't have to be concerned about any benevolent ones coming near me and causing me any harm. I know you'd like to hear more about the healing with the ETs, and that started about 15 years ago. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Dr. Andrea Puharich, who died a couple of years ago now. But we were very close friends, and we did a lot of research work together. He's the one who brought Uri Geller here to this country, so I met Uri when he first came over here. And even at that time, Uri, I realized, was a very good healer. And when I mentioned this to him, he said, well, yes, I can do healing, but you can't make any money with it. And I said, well, don't I know that? I know that. And he said that he was tired of being poor. He and his mother had struggled. And when he came to this country, naturally, people were, you know, all excited about his spoon bending and all that showbiz stuff, and were paying him well for it. So he told me, I can't make money healing, but they'll pay me a lot of money to do these parlor tricks, and which he did. Now, he really does use the energy to spin the spoons and start the watches and clocks as he says he does. He really does that. And, but now he did make a lot of money because he was able to tell many gem people where to dig for, emeralds and all the very valuable gems. And of course, they paid him a lot of money for that. However, now, I just heard recently, he's got plenty of money now making all that. So now he is going to do healing, and I'm very glad that he finally is going to do that. And of course, you know how involved he and Dr. Puharich were with all the UFOs and ETs and so on. So it was in this way that Dr. Puharich and Uri, of course, were always in very close contact with some of their UFO informers and collaborators in various projects that they were involved in. So the time came when it seemed that Dr. Puharich was asked if he could do something for some ETs that seemed to be having strange problems here, and they didn't know what to do about it. Well, Dr. Puharich checked them over, and he didn't know how to help them either. And so he called me. I was living in Virginia. He called me and said he had a couple of ETs who were in a very strange situation, and could he send them to me, and would I help them? In fact, the first was a young woman who was brought to me by I think it was a friend, a man. Anyway, he seemed to care very much about her, but they were both ETs. I'll describe the woman to you because I never saw such a beautiful person. You see, ETs can take whatever form they want. They can look like somebody in a t-shirt or blue jeans or whatever, or they can be impeccably dressed like they just stepped out of Brooks Brothers' window, or various. But this young woman, she seemed young to me, probably in her 20s, she was a real life, I think she's real life, like a Barbie doll, just absolutely gorgeous. She had the most exquisite hair. Her hair was like velvet. If you touched it, you just knew it would just feel like velvet. But anyway, she came walking in my door with this young man, had her by the arm, leading her in, and she seemed as though she was going to collapse at any minute, so he was helping her in. And I had my therapy table there, so I asked her to come to the table, and which she did, and lay down on the table. Now, it was just with a little lift or something. She didn't go through the physical action like you and I would, maybe put your arm up, your leg up, or whatever on their things. She was just up on the table, like almost levitated herself, or whether he did it, sort of almost levitated her up on the table. So, of course, here I had this beautiful girl on the table, lying there on her back. And naturally, I was this close to her. She was lying right there. And I had a chance to examine her in every detail. Looking at her as she walked in, I knew she didn't have anything on but this dress that clung to her, like I said, like a Barbie doll. And the dress was... I know fabrics, and of course immediately when you know fabrics and you sew, you look at the fabric you want to know is. The fabric was like nothing I had ever seen. I couldn't not tell. It didn't look like silk. It didn't look like cotton. It didn't look like anything of this earth, and it had a very intricate design in it of like earth tones on earth tones. pale beiges, browns, rust browns or whatever, in a beautiful, exquisite design. I would have loved to have that dress. It was absolutely fabulous. 15 minutes? Okay. I'll just finish describing this girl, and then we're going to do a demonstration. Anyway, I'll tell you what they look like close up. I touched her. I touched her skin. Her arms were bare. Their bodies are cooler than ours, all over. Her face, wherever I touched her, the body was cooler. And she just lay there and kept saying, I am dying. I am dying. That's all she said. I am dying. And so it was my job to find out why she thought she was dying. So looking at her, I suddenly knew why she thought she was dying. She was sent here from her own planet to do a job here amongst us and be amongst us here, which they often are, given an assignment. And she found it extremely difficult to try to adjust to our air, our climate, because this is what they are told to do. When they are put here amongst us, they are told to observe us very closely, to try to eat, wear, walk, dress as closely as possible as we are, so they are not noticed. And she was finding this extremely difficult because she couldn't cope with the food or the air, and that's why she thought she was dying. And so anyway, I worked with her, and she did feel better when I left. But again, looking at her skin, I looked closely at her face. You couldn't see any pores. There were no pores. The skin was smooth as porcelain with no pores. And her skin all over her body was light. It was as light as ours, but it had sort of a golden color. I don't mean a shiny gold like a ring, but I mean a gold tone like a skin would be. So I adjusted her respiration, which is, as I said, she was having trouble with the air and the breathing and everything, and she walked out feeling much better. The man had very little to say, but again, he was impeccably dressed in clothes that were barely, not even a wrinkle. Usually when they're well dressed, as I said, they seem as though they don't even have a wrinkle in their clothes. And he kept calling me for quite a while afterwards, but it was unusual. I thought that he always called me from a payphone. I mean, I could tell it was a payphone. And I don't know why he called me from a payphone, but that's what it was. But in any case, other ET-related people that I have worked with were women who had been made pregnant by them, and I had to check them over because they were concerned. But in each case, they were pregnant. They had not had any physical relationships with any man, husband or anyone. So, and working and again checking over these bodies who were pregnant with a little ET or whatever, I learned a great deal, and one of the women had been abducted 3 times, and I hypnotically regressed her and learned an incredible lot about why they are doing these abducting and what the reason was. One of the main reasons that I'm sure you've heard before is that they feel that their race is deteriorating, and so is ours. So they were selecting what they seemed to them some of the best physical specimens of human beings to take eggs from and have them fertilized in sort of an in vitro process back in their area, and they live in many places. So, well, since we have so little time now, I think I said I would do a quick demonstration of healing. You know, it's hard to see your faces with that light in my face. I know you're out there, but I can't tell who you are. But for demonstration purposes, I'd like somebody that has maybe a small problem that I can fix in a couple minutes, a pain of some kind, maybe. You have a pain?
It's not a pain, it's a constant problem.
It's what?
It's not a pain, but it's a constant problem.
What is it?
It's in my throat and in my lungs, coughing and drip and
You mean an allergy?
I don't know. It happened after an illness 4 years ago at Global Sciences, and I had a serious illness worst I've ever had, and I never quite got over it.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, the air in this hotel is so bad that even my sinuses are bothering me. I'll be glad to go home.
It's not just the hotel, it's all the time.
Excuse me?
It's all the time with me, it's constant.
Okay, and somebody else had their hand up, I think. Who?
I got a hip problem, tendonitis.
Oh, what?
Tendonitis in my hip.
In your hip?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see who else had their hand up.
I injured my hand lifting weights, and there's a pain in this hand. It won't go away.
Well, you know what you can fix that with? Arnica. Get a bottle or tube of arnica and rub it a few times, and it'll be gone. You can fix that very simply. Somebody else had their hand up? What?
How about my left ear?
You what?
My left ear.
Your left ear. Oh, you can't hear out of it. That would take too long for me to fix here. Yeah. Are you?
I have a dislocated thumb or a ligament torn in my thumb.
Okay. This gentleman here, how long has your leg been bothering you?
3.5 years.
Are you getting therapy for it?
Yeah. Nothing seems to work.
Well, you want magic touch, don't you? Yeah. Okay, you want to come up here on the table? Or take your shoes off? You have a belt on?
No.
Oh, okay. Take your shoes off and lie on the table with your head up this end, on your stomach. This end. On your stomach. Now, I know many of you here are healers and do healing, and so as you watch me work on him, you'll probably know what I am doing, and I'll do it real quickly so we'll have time for a couple questions, okay? Is this microphone working so I can walk around?
Yeah.
Pain is right here.
Yeah, okay. Could you come a little closer to me? Well, generally when I start to work on anyone, I run my hand all over their body, and that way it's like I get X-ray vision, or I hear what's wrong. I'm told by doctors and ETs and angel healers who work with me, and they all give me information and tell me what's wrong. But in any case, first of all, I usually work to clean the person's energy field out, because all of us collect a bunch of debris in our everyday life, and that causes disturbances of one kind or another in the physical body. So first of all, we try to clean all this out, and I'm trying to do this very quickly. Now, you just be very alert and very aware of what's happening to your body so you can tell them all later, okay?
Okay.
All right. Just pay close attention to what's happening. Now, within our own energies, we have all kinds of vibrations. We have vibrations that are circular. We have some that are like wavy patterns, as I'm doing here, that I'm working on. We have some that are bounce around in our energy field, and they all get out of adjustment. And so what you have to do first is clear the way out of his energy field so you can get at the physical problem. And now when you have someone with clairvoyant sight, such as we medical intuitive people, very often you can just look at a person and you can see even in the energy field that something is going to happen to them, like a heart attack usually shows up first in an energy field before it shows up in the physical body. Now, I'm not going to hurt you, so just be limp like a rag doll. And I'm working, usually I work around the table, but I'm staying on this side so you can all see what I'm doing. See here now, I can feel what's happening now in the physical body after it has started in the energy field. What it does is causes a misalignment in the whole skeleton. Have you had chiropractic treatments?
Yes.
Have you done anything about it on your own?
I've had all kinds of treatments with the many, many doctors.
Well, see, it affects your whole skeleton when you do that, and you would really need about a 20-minute workout to really get this corrected, but we have to just do something very quickly here, maybe to at least help you feel some improvement. See, you already have some misalignment even all up here. Okay, now you can get up in a minute. Just sit up and face the audience. Well, anybody want to ask him anything?
Feels a little better. Doesn't hurt as much.
Did you feel anything while she was working on you?
Yeah, a little vibration, a little energy, a lot of energy. It feels a lot better.
Stand up and see how it feels.
Yeah, feels better.
Well,
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
you're welcome. You're going to be here the rest of the day?
Yeah,
Going to be here tomorrow?
Yep.
And let me know how it is
Okay.
even tomorrow, okay?
Very good.
Now, how many more minutes? 1 minute, okay, 1 minute. Well, I have 1 minute to tell you the best reason why you need to take my workshop tomorrow. And that is when we have national and international disasters, like we have Hugo, we have Andrew, we have volcanoes erupting, and tornadoes of all kinds, and the tornado season now is just starting. And I just saw a book called Violent Weather Predictions that has the predictions for 2000 this year and next year, and they say that the weather's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to have more tornadoes. The big earthquake is going to hit California in 2001, and so on and so on. And the reason I'm telling this is because what happens when we have a Hugo or an Andrew or everything has collapsed around your trees, houses. I know a month or so ago, I didn't have phone, power, light, or anything. In Georgia, we had that ice storm. And it was just, I was 3 days without all those, and I know how bad it was. I couldn't even get out of my house because everything was a sheet of ice. So when the world has crashed around everybody, and everything is down, you can't run to a phone to call a doctor if one of your loved ones are hurt, or anyone's hurt. What have you got? The best tools in the whole world, your hands. That's all you have. So this is why you should learn to do healing to some degree, because you never know whether it's going to be your neighborhood next or what, or some loved one of yours who's going to collapse and need immediate help. And by learning to do healing, that you are learning to be of incredible help to somebody who will really need it. Okay. Okay. Time's up, they said.
Thank you.